I'm Ryan Locke, head football coach at Etowah High School, and you're watching Average Joe's Sports Talk. Ryan Locke, head football coach at Etowah High School.
Coach, it's an honor to sit in with you here at Etowah's Fieldhouse. First time to actually get to sit down and talk with you and interview you. Been a long time coming since you got the job. But before we get into the job that we got right now, let's take me back to the early years. You growing up, you playing sports, some of the sports you played, and what kind of led you into your coaching career?
Well, I wasn't necessarily what you would consider a multi-sport athlete, at least not out of youth league. After youth league, I grew up with a mother who taught, and so academics was pushed very hard. Football was certainly something that I was allowed to do, and something I enjoyed, and something that I wasn't very good at, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the team camaraderie. I enjoyed being a part of something and trying to be successful as a unit. So with that being said, I played high school football at Benjamin Russell High School, and from there made the decision that I wanted to get into coaching, and really about, I'd say, going into my junior year, if not going into my senior year, and was able to start that at a very early age. Most people don't get to start coaching at 18 years old, at least not in a true responsibility role. And I was given that opportunity early on at Benjamin Russell. Phil Lazenby was my head coach at Benjamin Russell my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, and it was through being around him and our other coaches on staff that I realized that's what I wanted to do. I appreciated the impact they had made on me. I saw the impact they had on my teammates, and I want to try to have that type of impact on young people as well. And so Coach Lazenby retired after my junior year and went down to UMS Wright as an assistant coach at that time. And then Willie Carl Martin, our longtime defensive coordinator under Steve Savarese and Phil Lazenby, became the head coach. And I was given the opportunity to play for him my senior year. We won the state championship. Everything was great. And in spring of my senior year, as I'm getting ready to graduate, he comes in the office and asked if I wanted to help coach ninth grade football. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to. So I helped coach ninth grade football that spring, and actually did that for 2 years. That was my first start in coaching. And on Friday nights, I helped out. First year, I was the get-back coach. Which, was,
you got to have those now.
I was the best get-back coach in the state of Alabama now. And then my second year, I actually went up into the box, and I helped spot for the defense. And then from there, while I did that, I was going to school at Central Alabama Community College. So after I got my associate's degree there, I transferred to Troy, and I had the opportunity to work for Coach Larry Blakeney on his staff as a student assistant for 3 years. And that was a unique time to be at Troy, because Troy had just made the transition from at that time 1AA, which is FCS now, to Division I. And my first year in 2004, we had a tremendously talented defensive team that included DeMarcus Ware. That was his senior year. We went to the first bowl game in Troy history. That was a lot of fun. Went to San Jose and played the Silicon Valley Bowl. And went through some issues. The second year we didn't do as well. We had some changes in the coaching staff, and had a chance to work under Tony Franklin when he was the offensive coordinator. He came in. Neil Brown came in as the wide receivers coach, and Matt Moore was the offensive line coach in my third year there. And we actually went on and played in the New Orleans Bowl. And so I had a chance to be around kind of the beginning of what has now become kind of a staple of Troy football: wide open, explosive, throw it all over the place type offense. And but before that, we had been a I formation downhill football team, and so I learned a lot from being around quite a few coaches at that time. Jeff Fila is a name that a lot of coaches in North Alabama would probably know, because he was the offensive line coach there. my first 2 years, and he was a true fundamental technician type coach. Matt Moore came in behind him, and he was good at fundamentals and technician too, but I learned a lot more about the pass pro emphasis and being able to relate it to younger kids as well from him. So that was good. And then from there, I spent a year at UAB as an offensive graduate assistant. That was the first year under Neil Callaway, and it was interesting because my offensive coordinator was Kim Helton, and his son is the head coach at Southern Cal now, Clay Helton. His other son is the head coach at Western Kentucky, Tyson Helton, who was actually on staff with us. And Kim Helton had actually been in the NFL for about 10 years or so, and had a huge knowledge of offensive football. I learned a lot of football in that year. We didn't win that many football games, but I learned a lot of football. Then from there was at West Georgia for 3 years, and was there when we were actually truly having to build that program from ground up. We had to pretty much completely redo everything from who we recruited, how we recruited, and build up. And I was there with Daryl Dickey for 3 years. And then went to Cumberland University, where I spent 4 years. And the head coach at Tennessee Tech University, Dwayne Alexander, was the head coach who hired me there. He hired me as the offensive line coach. And that was great because, it was another level of college football that I had not been at. I had not been at the NAIA level. Gave me a chance to really appreciate that style of football and that level of football, and to work with some really good coaches. And also, Coach Alexander had a unique situation in that he had been in college football, but he had also been a longtime high school coach. So he could relate to high school coaches in a good way. He could relate to high school kids. He had an offensive approach that was all about adapting his philosophy to the players instead of making his players adapt it to his philosophy. So that was really good for me to be around. And then 2 years into that, he leaves to take another job, and our defensive coordinator, Donnie Suber, became the head coach and promoted me to being the offensive coordinator, which gave me the opportunity to coach another position, because I moved from coaching offensive line to coaching quarterbacks, which that's a little bit of a change.
You better believe it.
So from there, I was able to. I really had to dive hard into quarterback play, quarterback drills, fundamentals, how you coach the quarterbacks from a schematic and a conceptual standpoint, but also having to manage coaches on your staff. As the offensive coordinator, I was responsible for making sure our offensive staff was on the same page in terms of what we did at practice, what we did in the game. So that was my first time actually having to manage actual coaches. And along about that time, started making the decision that maybe philosophically I was better suited for high school. I still had my teaching degree. I had an updated teaching certificate, and my wife got a job at the University of Alabama. So I was fortunate to be able to move to Tuscaloosa and work at Northridge High School for a year. And there I worked under Mike Smith, who's the head coach and headmaster and athletic director at Southern Academy right now in Greensboro. They actually just won the single A AISA state championship this past year. So I was able to do that for a year, and from there, Tad Niblett, whom I knew through the recruiting process because we recruited a few Hoover kids when he was the offensive coordinator at Hoover, he reached out to me and wanted me to come and be his offensive coordinator and offensive line coach at Foley. And so I was able to do that for 2 years and work with Tad, and he's a tremendous football coach and a tremendous person. Yeah, it does. It's a family deal for them. And then about that time, I'm not going to get into why, but basically my wife and I felt like we needed to move to back to Tuscaloosa, and John Holliday needed a coach, an offensive line coach at Tuscaloosa County. And I reached out to him, and we talked, and I worked for him for a year. And then after that year, he said, "Yeah, I'm probably going to take the Etowah job. I need you to commute to Etowah every day." And I said, "Well, I don't know about that. I have to check with the missus." And she was good with it. And so I'm thankful.
So you drove?
I drove from Birmingham.
Okay. I thought
every
she was
day.
driving from like Northport. or
No,
something.
no. We moved to Birmingham so
Okay.
she could still work at Alabama, and I could still
Okay.
work at. I could work up here, but I tell you that has been a blessing. It's amazing how God works. You never know exactly what plans He's putting you into, what position
100%.
He's putting you into until you actually start seeing His plan come around. Because if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here today. You'd have another person here.
Now, the thing I'm catching from what you just told me, not only did you coach at different levels
Mm-hmm.
in high school, but you also coached different levels in college.
Mm-hmm.
But the main thing I caught when I was listening to that right there is different positions, and you've learned the game of football as a whole instead of being locked into just being an offensive line coach or a quarterback's coach. Talk about that a little bit. The different levels of football and how that's translated, and also different positions that you've had to alter your coaching.
Well, I think to start off with the different levels of football, you learn to appreciate athletes and how to coach different personalities. You also, as you go from level to level, and you don't have the same caliber of athletes that you might have, say, at a Division I school, you learn that your coaching style has to change to fit the type of athlete that you have. And certainly that goes with going from being a Division I at a Division I institution like a Troy or UAB down to West Georgia, where we still had some good athletes, but not at the same level that we had certainly at Troy, and then on down to Cumberland, where you had good athletes, but not what we had at West Georgia or at certainly at Troy. You have to adapt your coaching and your not only your style of coaching, but what you're coaching. You have to be fluid enough in whatever schematics you're trying to do, whether it be, an I formation, a 4-3 defense, a 3-4 defense. You have to be able to adapt to your personnel and fit it to your personnel. And certainly at the high school level, that is more true than anything, is being able to adapt and be able to fit the kids.
Now, you've played and coached under some unbelievable coaches at the highest level. What is something that they all have in common that you've picked up on? Whether it be work ethic or something, there's something that they all have ingredients. I'm sure there's something.
Well, work ethic and ability to communicate with young people, I would think, would be the common theme with all of them. Some of them were extremely well organized. Some of them not as organized as some. Some of them tremendous X and O coaches. Some of them not as much X and O's. But the ability to communicate with young people is the number one thing, and the ability to make young people know that you care about them. Because at the end of the day, there's no saying in coaching, players don't really care about what you know as much as if they know you care.
They can relate.
Yes, they want to be able to relate to you, and they want to know that you can relate to them.
What do you think the biggest difference in football in general is, say, from when you played to now? Society's changed and everything like that, but what would you say the biggest thing that sticks out?
Well, in terms of from when I played to now, I don't think the kids necessarily have changed. I think the expectations that society in general has for kids have changed a little bit, and that filters down through the school systems and to teachers and coaches, and you have to adapt with what you're allowed to do. Quite frankly, I don't know if these kids today could be coached the way that I was coached 20 years ago. And I don't know if society would allow us to coach the way that I was coached 20 years ago. At the same time, from a football standpoint, the game has changed tremendously. Look at high school football over the last 20 years. 20 years ago, when I was finishing high school and coming out, you primarily had teams running the wing tee. You primarily had teams running the I. The spread was really just beginning. It's in an infancy phase in the state, particularly Hoover. I credit really Hoover and Homewood in this state with starting that. Hoover adopting the air raid spread system when Russ Prost was there, and then when Bob Newton was at Homewood. They were really the first team in this state that I saw make a living running spreading people out and running the zone read. Now that's probably the most common play in football. So it's amazing how the evolution of the game has changed quite a bit.
I agree with you 100%. You know, you spoke about kids in general. There's way more distractions nowadays than they've ever been. And I love asking different coaches this, and I always get a different answer. How do you keep your guys dialed in with everything from video games to girls to cars to everyday high school stress?
Cell phones. that's
cell
one.
phones.
I think communicating with them, being available to communicate with them. When I was growing up, you didn't have your coach's cell phone number. Quite frankly, you didn't really want to communicate with your coach when you left football. You certainly didn't go hang out in their office. That was a no-no. I don't necessarily want them to come around and have, feel like it's just a place to chill, but you want them to feel comfortable. You want them to feel comfortable to be able to reach out to you if things are going wrong and have the comfort level and being able to communicate with you.
100%. Now, you were here last year with Coach Holliday, and you guys had a very successful football team. What did you learn about the city of Etowah when you first got here? It's kind of a special place, and I grew up here myself, and I can speak firsthand, being through this 90s teams and the great runs we had. But what did you find out about the city of Etowah? It's a little bit different than most animals around the state.
Well, it's very similar to the town I grew up in that it's a football crazy town. People shut down for Friday nights. And I can tell you I've been a few places where that's just not the case. They think it's the case, but it's not the case. Here, it's very much the case. People here expect to win. They don't have very much tolerance for not winning. And, the expectations sometimes are maybe a little too high at times, but that's good. You want to be at a place that has really high expectations. High expectation, it beats not having any expectations. And I've been in places where that's the case. So you want to have high expectations, and more importantly, we have an administration and a resource pool that is better than a lot of places I've been. Our administrators support athletics. They understand how athletics helps academics, and that goes all the way at the top. Mr. Jeff Colgrove, our superintendent, does a great job of making sure that we're supported. Our administration, Dr. Stephen Hall, and all the administrators in this system do a great job of supporting our program and making sure everybody's in line. Jeff Johnson, our middle school principal, is a great supporter, and that's a huge tie-in, is being able to have the middle school and the high school to have that relationship to where when you have your varsity program, your middle school program, there's a solid ascension going, as opposed to where if you have two separate programs with two separate agendas, you have chinks in the chain, so to speak, and you never have that connecting point that allows the kids to flow from one to another and transition. So that is a huge part of what makes Etowah special. Is they're Blue Devils from the time they're in youth league to the time they're high school, and that's something they ascend to. That's something they're excited about.
Growing up and living this myself, it's kind of special to have somebody like in here, like you mentioned, like Colgrove and Dr. Hall and yourself, that actually takes on that and doesn't run from it and actually embraces that.
Absolutely.
Now, for people who don't live in or around this area, and you would describe Friday nights at Jim Glover Field, how would you describe that experience?
Exciting, thrilling. When the student section starts beating on that tin can they have, it gets really loud. I'm glad I wear a two-piece headset sometimes.
Yeah, it's extremely loud.
But I tell you, it's great. People are excited about the game. They're involved in the game. They watch the game. It is the whole city. I've been at several 7A's and a 6A school, and I would put our crowd size up against anybody that I've been around. The city of Etowah shows up, and
road games as well.
That's absolutely. It doesn't matter if we're an hour or 2 hours down the road. We have a pretty good. There's sometimes we had a better crowd than our opponents did.
Definitely seen that.
Yeah.
Something else I'm going to give you credit on that you don't even know about this. It's just some parents that told me, and I've seen it firsthand. Something you did before you even had the job. You stepped out and assumed the role. Keeping everybody together. I don't know. Through communication online, even during this COVID-19, and kind of stepped up and assumed that role, which I really like because, me personally, if I was looking to hire somebody and I see somebody who's already doing the job and it's kind of like undeniable to not hire, that's the guy I want to hire. But can you talk about you stepping up? You're not told to do it. You just stepped up and said, hey, let's keep this thing rolling. Let's keep everybody on the same page through Google. I don't know what you guys use to communicate with all the players.
Primarily social media.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go back to when Coach Holliday resigned. He resigned on a Wednesday. At least he informed us that he was resigning on a Wednesday. And going from there and that was that last week that we had a full week of school before we got out because of the COVID situation. So he comes in, tells me that morning that he's retiring. That evening, I had a conversation with our principal and Dr. Hall, and they made me the interim head coach. And so immediately you start going through your mind of trying to make sure that we keep the ship afloat. We had a plan in place if school continued, and we were back in place the next week after spring break, that we were going to continue our workout program the way it was. We were going to start implementing small groups, 10 players per coach, to be able to start working on some fundamentals on the field. Well, obviously, COVID hit that next week, or COVID had already hit, and we were not allowed to continue school past that following Monday. So from there, I would say, and I don't want to take it all on myself because it's not a me thing, it's a we thing. Our coaching staff in general stepped up. All of our coaches did. Everybody from Philip Pierce, Kendra Cook, Matthew Bone, Coach Ray, our middle school coaches, Coach Worthy, Coach West, Coach Carter. They all stepped up and made sure that our players were communicated with. Each coach called their kids at least once a week. We got a workout plan together to make sure that they were to try to encourage them to do something, and start having staff meetings. So from there, I don't want to make it out that I did everything because it wasn't an I thing. We did it as a staff, and we were able to. Coach Cook did a lot of the social media posting. I would post a lot on social media. All of our coaches communicated with our players to make sure that they were taken care of. Number one, that they were healthy and they were safe, and then to check in, make sure they were doing their workouts. And on top of that, I had quite a few city officials tell me that players were out and about doing drills on their own.
Oh yeah.
I would have. It was not uncommon for the mayor to call me and let me know that certain people were out doing workouts and all that type of stuff. Yeah.
Now, when you got that call that you were going to be the head coach here at Etowah, what was your initial thoughts and feeling like, hey, this hard work that I've done over these years has paid off now? It's my turn.
It's a very humbling and honoring feeling, and I don't say that to use a cliche, because truly, when you've done this as much as I have in terms of coaching, and you get that opportunity at a place like Etowah, that opportunity doesn't come around for everybody. Not many people can say their first head coaching job is at a place with 2 state championship banners, all these great jerseys that are on this wall in this room. I'm looking around and I see Nix, I see Cook, I see Wadley, I see Kitchens, I see Nix, Worthy, Ed Sissom. Some really, really, really good players, and I shouldn't even start naming because there are going to be some names I should. Garnett Williams, I forgot.
Oh yeah, too. NFL rookie.
Yeah. So. Not many coaches can say their first head coaching job was at a place with this much history, this much tradition, and quite honestly, a pretty talented roster that has a chance to do some special things.
Absolutely.
Potentially.
Talk about that team, this team you just inherited in general. You've got the and I watched these guys come up from the youth, and I remember 2 years ago, really heavy in senior leadership, and these guys were sophomores, but you could already see these are not your normal sophomores. Now they've kind of assumed that leadership role as seniors, and I'm talking about some real talented football players. Talk about this group and this team right here, just in general, from what you've learned about these guys last year and then over into this year.
Well, the first thing you see is when the lights come on Friday nights, they're competitors. They're all competitors. They all want to win. They compete with each other. They compete with each other in everything. They're competing right now to see who has the most offers. A few of them are.
I've seen that.
But having a team full of competitors is a good thing. Now, the challenge is making sure all those different competitions are channeled in the right direction, and to make sure that we're one group, we're one team. To coin a phrase from Coach Ogeron at LSU, we're one team, one heartbeat. And we are fortunate that our senior class is fairly talented. And from all areas. We have some pretty good skilled players. We have a quarterback who has a pretty good arm. We have some linemen who have some size to them. At this level, the 4A, 5A level, you don't always have that in one class, and this particular class has that. And when you start talking about Martavius Davis might be the fastest kid that I've ever coached. Ollie Finch is pretty fast as well, and he has the height to go with it. You have Trent Davis, who is as hard-nosed a running back and has tremendous lateral movement. Brady Troop, our quarterback, he's got a really good arm and a good mind for the game. Toby Camp, a defensive lineman who's gotten so much stronger and more confident in his play as a defensive lineman. It's probably going to help us out some this year at tight end. Then we've got Wesley Stone, who's just a big bulldozer in there as an interior offensive lineman. Aiden Gooden has come on quite a bit as an offensive lineman who is versatile enough to be able to play inside as a guard and outside as a tackle. And again, I shouldn't start naming names. Ethan Foster. I forgot about Ethan. Ethan has the ability to be, to play defense. He can play linebacker on offense. Although if you look at him, you wouldn't think he was a linebacker, but he's not afraid to stick his nose in there and hit somebody. And he's just a little jitterbug when he gets the ball. He has no telling where he's going to go. This is a really talented group, and they're good kids. They're good kids. I enjoyed being around them last year. They work hard. They want to win. And you can get on to them and they can take coaching. That's a challenge in itself. Being able to take coaching, being able to take criticism, and being able to turn it into constructive criticism, to be able to change what you're doing. That's an important role.
One thing I noticed about these guys, and I just know a lot of them on the field, they work when the lights are not on, the coaches ain't watching. How important is that, having guys that want to get better on their own?
Well, as a coach, you're I heard one of the former head coaches I used to work for made this statement: if you were not at practice, if you didn't have any coaches at practice, and practice was able to go on and not miss a step, that's when you know your program is in pretty good shape. And we're getting to that point, and we had a lot of that go on with this COVID-19 situation where we weren't able to be with them. I was not able to manage practice in any way, and they would call me. I would see pictures of them out there working, and of course I can't do anything to critique or coach that, or certainly organize it. They did it all on their own, and so I was very impressed with that. Very impressed with some of the senior leadership we had. I think this situation that we've had with COVID-19, as devastating as it has been to our country, our economy, the world, the one good thing that has come out of it on our end is I think it's scared some of our players, so particularly these upcoming seniors, because now all of a sudden their senior season is in jeopardy, and they want to make sure that if we have that opportunity to have a senior season, they want to make sure that they put themselves in the best position to have it.
It means more knowing that it can be taken away.
Yes, absolutely.
Just like the baseball seniors.
Mm-hmm. That was devastating because I was at their last game.
That's terrible.
And it was, it hurt seeing the look on their faces when they realized this was it.
Man, that's awful. I want to fast forward in time, God willing. When you take the field for the first time as a head coach, and I know a lot of things will be running through your mind. Is this set up, cross this T, and dot this I? But what do you think those feelings are going to be like if you do look at the future?
You really never know, I guess, until you get there. You think you've got everything figured out as an assistant coach, and then when you do get this opportunity, you realize that you don't have it all figured out. You're learning as you go. I'm sure when I get to that point, it'll sink in that this is it, and I won't be going up to whoever the play caller is and be, okay, what's the first play of the game? Because I'll already have that down, and then I'll be asking myself, oh, is this the right play?
Hey.
What are we going to do if 1st and 10 doesn't work out so well? Now we're 2nd and 15.
Those folks in that metal bleacher will let you know if it's working out or not.
Well, that's why I wear a 2-piece headset so I can't hear them.
I love it. So let me ask you this. This is something I like to ask you coaches. If I was a player for Etowah this year, what is something that you demand of me that I'm going to have to do this if I want to be a part of this football team?
Have pride, have discipline, and have toughness, and be accountable. Those are the main things. Pride, discipline, toughness are the main points of our program. And with that goes accountability, being able to be accountable for what you do, not only in this field house on that practice field, but you're accountable when you're in the school. I had a team meeting Tuesday where we had the whole team, socially distant, and we laid out what we are as a program. And one of the main points I made clear to them was when you leave this building and this school property, you are still a representative of Etowah High School. You are still a representative of the Etowah High School football program. When you're out in community, when you're at the lake, when you go to a restaurant, when you're at your girlfriend's, when you're sitting at the kitchen table, when you're at church on Sunday, you're a representative of this program. And so being accountable for your actions when you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever else they have nowadays. I've lost out on some of these other social media forums, but you're accountable for what you put on there. I'm accountable for anything I put on there as a teacher and as a coach and as an employee of Etowah City Schools. There are things that I need to make sure that don't go on my accounts, whether it be one side or the other. So you're accountable. So keep that in mind when you're out and about.
If you don't believe me, just ever make a mistake, the first thing you'll read, the headline will say, Etowah football player blank blank does something, All right.
Yeah, we want to avoid that. The only thing we want in that case is good football headlines at the end.
There we go. And now, here's something that I like to ask coaches, and it's not really stepping on toes, but it's something that needs to be addressed. What would you like out of a parent of a player? What would you say, hey, if you can do this for me, that's really going to help not only your son, but this team in general?
Obviously, supporting the program, supporting their child's athletic endeavors, understanding that we as coaches are trying to put the right places in the right pieces in place. When it comes to supporting the program, that is the biggest thing. Support us. Don't get involved with playing time, because at the end of the day, we have to make that decision as coaches as to who plays and what they play, and basically what gives us the best chance to be successful. Understand that the main points that we're trying to give your child aren't necessarily the skills to play football. it's trying to teach through football skills that will be able to help them in life, through having pride in who you are, your family name, the church where you attend, having discipline in being able to make the right decisions when you know that you don't necessarily want to make the right decision. It's a lot easier to make the wrong decision, but you have the discipline to stay with and make that decision that needs to be made. Toughness, and just, life is hard. You've got to be able to get through a hard life. And the older you get, the more you figure that out. And hopefully going through this will give you some type of mental toughness to be able to push through the obstacles that come through life.
Absolutely. And we're going to close on this right here. After the game of football is over with, let's say, I hope you have everybody goes to the NFL. I hope we have 5 Etowah guys that go to the NFL in this team.
That'd be nice to have.
Yeah, no doubt. At least go to college. But
yeah.
After that's over with, what do you hope that these guys take away from not only the experience here at Etowah and being a part of this team, but from your teaching, some of the things that you learned growing up that you're trying to pass down to these guys, so when they go become fathers and stuff like that?
Well, it kind of goes along with what I just said. I explained this in another interview that I did recently. The main point that will judge my success as a coach and our staff's success as a coach is not in December if we're fortunate to win a state championship or not. The main part's going to come 10 years down the road when we're able to look back and see what these young people have done with their lives since then. Are they good husbands, good fathers? Do they have stable jobs? Are they providing for their family? Are they contributing to society? Or are they going down another road? And we certainly want to minimize those as much as possible and try to eliminate that as much as possible. Again, and this goes with teaching someone to have pride in themselves, being able to instill some type of self-discipline. Discipline's a word that, quite honestly, when you talk with 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, discipline's not a very popular word because there's usually some negative connotation that comes along with that. It's usually I'm being disciplined because I messed up. I'm being gotten on to because of this. I'm being punished because of this. That's their mind of discipline. If we can instill in them the understanding of self-discipline and making good decisions and the right choices in life, that will help prevent all that other negative discipline that they associate with it. So teaching pride, teaching discipline, and teaching you to be able to persevere through life and be tough. I'm a firm believer that mental toughness overrides physical toughness. If you have mental toughness, then you'll be able to push through things that the common person would not be able to push through. And there's nothing fun about being out in Alabama heat at 3:30 in the afternoon wearing shoulder pads, a helmet, knee pads, thigh pads, football pants, a girdle. There's nothing fun about that at times. But having the discipline to push through it and focus on what needs to get done, and having the toughness, the mental toughness to be able to push through it and have a good practice is going to lead to really good results on Friday night. And the same can be said in life. Having the discipline to push through the fine points of your job will lead to bigger and better results with your job and possible promotions. And the same thing with relationships. You got to put in, as my wife tells me all the time, you got to make those bank investments for it to pay off later on.
She's not joking about that.
Nah, that's true.
Mental toughness standpoint, I'm a big fan of David Goggins, and that's what he's 100% based on Navy SEALs. And you're exactly right on that.
Yeah,
Coach. Really appreciate it. It's been a great interview, and we're looking forward to covering you guys this fall.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate what you guys do for high school athletics, period, in this area, and you help out a lot of these kids, and it's any exposure you give our program is very appreciative. Thank you very much,
Coach. Thank you so much.